Today's Bible study comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 through 18, and reads as follows. Now I am ready to visit you for the third time, and I will not be a burden to you, because what I want is not your possessions, but you. Woo. After all, children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. So I will very gladly spend for you everything I have and expend myself as well. If I love you more, will you love me less? Be that as it may, I have not been a burden to you. Yet, crafty fellow that I am, I caught you by trickery. Did I exploit you through any of the men I sent to you? Ooh. I urged Titus to go to you, and I sent our brother with him. Titus did not exploit you, did he? Did we not walk in the same footsteps by the same Spirit? Ooh. So remember, Paul wasn't with him, and he had spoken earlier about why he wasn't there. But Paul is telling the Corinthians, now for the third time, I am ready to come to see you. And you remember, he founded the church when he first got there, and he was there for a while, like a year and a half. And then his second visit, when he came by, Paul was there, but um, it was an uncomfortable visit. And now he's saying, "Hey, I'm ready to come back for a third time, the third time." And he says, "I will not be a burden to you." And Paul is telling the Corinthians, "Hey, when I get there, hey, I'm coming to get a collection. We talked about it. We got to send it back to the church in Judea." And he will not take money for himself. And he's going to do what he did before with them. And that is, he took care of himself. He will not be burdensome. That means he takes nothing in this except what he takes back to the church in Judea. What he's telling them is, hey, I'm going to still be the same. I work. I'm a worker. He was telling them before. So don't let me burden you. And Paul is telling them, I will take nothing except the money for the church in Judea. And he tells them next, he says, for I do not seek yours, but you. What's his goal? It is not what he can get from you, from God's people. That's not a ministry. A true ministry is not what we can get from God's people. But the truth of it is, what can we give to God? People need to know what the Lord can give to them. Okay? And we need to know what can we give to God's people. And Paul is telling them, hey, if Paul is working with them, he's giving them something. He's giving something to them. So Paul is telling them, hey, I ain't coming to get nothing. I just want to give you something. And then he goes, for the children ought not lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And this basically is Paul telling you, hey, do children put money aside for the parents, or do parents put money aside for the children? And this is why Paul is saying, hey, that's why I don't need your money. This is why I don't receive anything from you. And we just said in the verse before, for I do not seek yours, but you. Okay? And Paul was, in this case, the shepherd of the Corinthians. So he was there to give. They may think and thought the way of those super apostles, but Paul says, no, I'm here to give. I put things up to you. Paul was more spiritually mature than they were. So Paul had more to give. He could give more to them. And he was telling them also, hey, I'm your spiritual father. You are the children, the spiritual children. That's also where you get for the children. For the spiritual children ought not lay up for the spiritual father. No, it should be switched. And Paul in this text is the spiritual father here, and they're the spiritual children. Paul is feeding into them. He feeds them. They don't feed him. So Paul is telling them, hey, this is what's going on. I will very gladly spend and be spent for your souls. And Paul is saying, hey, even though you ain't down with me, okay, even though you don't support me, I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm gonna keep doing what I do. He wanted them to, and they should have, but that was their problem. Paul was gonna do what he was supposed to do. And Paul loved teaching and preaching. So he was in a mood of giving all the time. And then he says he would be very gladly to spend and be spent for your souls. And I don't care if they liked him or they didn't like him. Paul says, I'm still here. I'm gonna do it. And if you look at what he says here, he goes, so where'd I go? Be as it may, I have not been a burden to you. No, he hasn't. Yet, crafty fellow that I am, I caught you by trickery. Paul is still working on these people. And he says, the more abundantly I love you, the less I am loved. See, that's a strong verse because Paul says, I'm giving. The more I give, the less you give. In short, but he used love. He says, the more abundantly I love you, the less I am loved. And this is strong, and it's not a good verse. It's a painful thing to say. The more you love on somebody, the less they love on you. Because the truth of the matter is, the more you love on them, the more they should, and I said should, they should love on you. Um, but even with their shortcomings of reciprocation here, Paul did not let that stop him. It didn't stop him from doing the word. It didn't mess his spirit up. He would very gladly spend and be spent for the Corinthian Christians. Excuse me, and that's what he said. He told them, "You ain't gonna stop me. I will still do it. I'll still do what I'm supposed to do." So Paul is working, and then we get to my part that I just wrote. Nevertheless, being crafty, I caught you with guile, trickery. And Paul is, trust me, he's being very sarcastic again. Um, they thought Paul was crafty or being crafty, but the problem is Paul was not being crafty, but he says, "You bet I'm being crafty. I've caught you with guile and tricked you superbly." And the people that were being crafty were the super apostles, the eminent apostles. And they were, we talked about them earlier, but those were the ones that came for the money, the ones that told you all this, hooped it all, that was bragging on themselves, that looked good, that sounded good. They're the ones that are truly catching you with trickery, and we fall for that even in this world today. So Paul asked him, did I take advantage of you? Ooh, so Paul is asking him straight up, did I take advantage of you? And if this answer is no, and the answer is no, in case you're wondering, if this answer is no, then y'all lied about me being crafty. And Paul reminds them and tells them, hey, none of my people were crafty towards you. He says, did I exploit you through any of the men I sent to you? I urged Titus to go to you, and I sent our brother with him. Titus did not exploit you. No craftiness. Did he? Did we not walk in the same footsteps by the same Spirit? Titus and the brethren had the same actions as Paul did. They didn't mess with their money at all. Paul and his people never came at them financially in a way that wasn't appropriate. So they walked the same as Paul did. So when you claim trickery, you see that your claim is false. So when he says, did I take advantage of you? The answer is no. The ones that took advantage of you took your money. They spoke well like you like it. They said things that you like. They told you and bragged on themselves, but I never did that. And even when I bragged on my suffering and how I depended and relied on the Lord, and he delivered me. As I was in my weakness, he was in his strength, and I was stronger in my weakness because of him. But when I let go and let myself rely on the true God, that is when he showed his true power to me. That is what I have been doing with you. I have not been a stumbling block. I have been here. I may not be the appearance that you may look, but remember, I spoke the truth. And that was Paul in that section. Amen.